which a large number of the Muslim community in this country do believe in and want to impose, do they believe in civil liberty?
I would say the people that want to impose Sharia law,
do they comply with English values or British values as you define them?
No, I think if you want to come over and, sort of overhaul the system of government in Britain, I think there's a pretty valid argument for us to say that you're probably not welcome in the country.
So what should we do? Should we deport you for having a disagreement about civil liberty?
If you're an insurrectionist, if you're literally saying that we should introduce corporal and capital punishment in Britain,
what if you just want to vote for it? That 33% of the Muslim community, according to some estimates, believe in Sharia law, want Sharia law in Britain. Should they be able to elect people who will advocate for that?
Konstanton, you keep asking me the same question.
No, it's a different question.
I'm going to keep giving you the same answer.
One major thing that's happened in Britain in recent years is that finally the immigration debate has been blown wide open. After many years of political correctness where there were only a few voices, the likes of Douglas Murray, Tommy Robinson, who was ostracized, and a few other people were talking about it, but it really wasn't in the mainstream. Now, finally, there is this widespread opposition to mass migration in Britain that is being voiced and aired again and again. But there are still some obstinate characters who insist that there is no problem whatsoever with the people coming into Britain. They're no threat to British values. They're no threat to British culture whatsoever. That's what this dolt tried to say here on Piers Morgan when he takes on Konstanton Kisin on the subject, particularly of the migrants coming from illiberal Muslim societies. Take a look.
All right, Konstantin, you wanted to get in there.
Well, there's a few things that both Cenk and Brandon, the few points that they made, I think are relevant but different in the UK, in particular this Crowborough protest that I spoke to people at. One of the things they were very keen to emphasize is there are hundreds of Ukrainians living in the town or have been living in the town over the last 2 or 3 years, within families, within homes that people welcome them in. But what they're saying is there's a big difference between women and children fleeing war and people who get on a boat in France, throw their passport or their ID in the sea, and then get here and a single man being housed, unvetted, unchecked, etc. So, again, I think it's very important. The conversation's been about immigration. This is not about immigration. Both the United States, where I spent a lot of time, Brandon and Cenk have both been on my show when we've been over there, right? You guys both know this. America is the most pro-immigrant country in the world that I've ever been to. UK, probably second or third in terms of some other places that you might compare it to. These are welcoming countries that we live in. We welcome people to come here, start businesses, be contributors. But when you come to this country and you are someone who's deliberately broken the rules in order to get in here, we're right to be suspicious of you, and we should be keeping these people under lock and key so they can't go out into the local community and threaten and menace women, children and residents, elderly residents. And in Crowborough, the place I filmed, do you know that you probably know this, Piers? The police station there is unmanned because it's such a safe place. Now, what happens when you've got hundreds of people running around who you don't know what they are and they've got nothing to do? You've got big problems building up because of that. Just nothing of the fact, we've got the same problem that Brandon mentions in the UK, where at one point we were spending £1 million a day on hotels for illegal immigrants. And the cost of housing on these military bases is basically the same. And look, it's very important to say, I mean, there are differences between different groups of people. And so, you mentioned the racism point. Well, we've had tens of thousands of Hong Kongers come in. Do you hear lots of anti-Hong Konger rhetoric in this country? We've had hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians fleeing the war come in. Are you hearing lots of anti-Ukrainian sentiment? No, because ultimately this is a cultural problem. And this point that Brandon made very well. When you have people coming from certain places where, let's be honest, women are considered second-class citizens, if not cattle, then of course you're going to be expecting that some of the incidents that we've seen, whether it's grooming gangs, whether there's lots of other problems that we've had up and down the country. So we also have to be reasonable and actually delineate between immigration, legal immigration, and what we basically have is people coming illegally against the wishes of the British public. And the final point I'll make is this. Both in the United States and here, nobody, and I mean nobody, voted for this. Nobody voted for this. Nobody signed up to this. And I'm glad we're sitting here with the four of us from different political perspectives. And all of us now today agree it's not racist to bring this up. But also, let's be honest, Piers, 5 years ago, bringing these points up would have got you demonized
we wouldn't have had the debate.
Correct.
Right? Because people would have said, if you're raising any concerns about this, obviously you're a racist.
And that's one of the benefits of this problem getting so bad. At least we're finally allowed to talk about it.
Are we creating a problem in 20 years' time if we carry on down this route? Does it matter? You know, do you stop being England, for example? This is what Tucker Carlson was arguing. I argue strenuously, no, we don't. But there's no doubt the country will look very different in 50 years' time to what it did 50 years ago.
I don't think it would be England and Britain in the way that it has been in history. So I think that doesn't necessarily preclude us from welcoming people in and assimilating them into our country. And that has been happening for decades and even centuries. But I think Brandon is right. The assimilation is the point. If you want to come to our country, you want to apply for a visa, you want to follow the rules, you want to adopt our culture, you want to teach your children to love this country, to speak English, to integrate, to contribute, as Cenk was saying, you know, go out and actually contribute to the country you've just arrived in. That's great. But that is not what we have in Europe. We have large ghettos of non-integrating populations who do not want to participate, who do not want to contribute, who do not want to speak our language. And look, I lived in Tower Hamlets for some time. I went to the doctor's surgery. The leaflet is in 100 languages. I don't understand why. This is an English-speaking country, and you either speak English or you find a country with a language you prefer.
Ollie.
Well, unlike Konstanton, I think people that speak other languages are also entitled to healthcare. I would just
I
add
didn't say that they're not entitled to healthcare. I said they should learn English if they want to live here.
Please, I'd like to speak. So I think this idea that your sort of culture, your national identity can potentially be diluted by people of a different skin tone or indeed religious background is a pretty pathetic argument. It's a patriotism that's grounded in weakness and fragility. My patriotism is grounded in strength. I believe the ideas of English national identity, British national identity are pretty strong, and I'm not that worried about people that come to the UK with a different idea of what that could be, coming over here and diluting it. You know, from Magna Carta through to now, a sense of fair play unless the English are invading your country. I think, you know, we've got a pretty good solid idea of what English values and identity are.
What are they?
I just said. I gave you a sense of civil liberty, a pride and a sense of fair play.
So people
honesty.
who believe in Sharia law, which a large number of the Muslim community in this country do believe in and want to impose, do they believe in civil liberty?
I would say the people that want to impose Sharia law, no.
Do they comply with English values or British values as you define them?
No, I think if you want to come over and, you know, sort of overhaul the system of government in Britain, I think there's a pretty valid argument for us to say that you're probably not welcome in the country.
So what should we do? Should we deport you for having a disagreement about civil liberty?
If you're an insurrectionist, if you're literally saying that we should introduce corporal and capital punishment in Britain, yeah,
what if you just want to vote for it? You know, that 33% of the Muslim community, according to some estimates, believe in Sharia law, want Sharia law in Britain. Should they be able to elect people who will advocate for that?
Konstantin, you keep asking me the same question.
No, it's a different question.
I'm going to keep giving you the same answer. My idea of what I've just told you.
Should we deport people who want Sharia law? That's what I'm asking.
If you want to overthrow the system of government, i.e. impose Sharia law instead of secular democracy, yes, I have a ginormous problem with that. Additionally, I have a ginormous problem with the British head of state being a religious figure in King Charles. I have a ginormous problem with a permanent fixture in our legislature being religious representatives. There are only two countries. There are only two countries in the world where that's the case. One is the UK, the other is Iran. You know, I have problems with both of those things. I want us to live in a secular democracy. What happens between you and the man that you think exists in the sky is your business.
But still, the vast majority of people in the UK identify as Christian, just under 50%. The next highest in terms of faith is actually non-believers completely, about 35%, I think. And then you're down to like sort of 5% Muslim and then down to the other religions. So, you know, it's still a predominantly Christian. Of those who have a faith, we are predominantly a Christian country. So there shouldn't be intrinsically, by that criteria,
but it's not just that
too much of an issue of the head of the church being the king.
It's not just that. We'll just walk around London. The entire architecture of this city is Christian in its every definition. Everything about this country has roots in Christianity. Now, that is not to say that everybody must be Christian. And I certainly haven't been Christian for most of my life, and I don't even know if I'm Christian now. My point is, even when I was an atheist, I still thought it was a Christian country, because it is, because that's a fact, because you can see it with your own eyes. So I don't understand the squeamishness about saying it is a Christian country, and in my view, should remain so.
All right, this guy, I mean, this is crazy, first of all, to compare King Charles to the Ayatollah of Iran. Did you notice that? How he slipped that in there? You have the head of a proper constitutional monarchy where the monarchy is a ceremonial position as opposed to a supreme leader who just makes the decisions in a completely dictatorial regime where if women don't cover their hair, they can get arrested and even killed. I mean, you're making that comparison. That is absolutely insane. But I think more importantly than that anecdote is the two massive mistakes that he makes. The first massive mistake he makes is when he says that I want a country based on fair play and civil liberties, and therefore I'm not threatened by what? People who come in who don't believe in fair play and civil liberties, who believe in religious absolutist laws like Sharia law, like the Islamists, because they don't believe in that. So how can you say you're not threatened by that? By people who come in who don't want those things, who they say they want Sharia law. And then you say, oh, if they want Sharia law, then yeah, we should get rid of them maybe, or we shouldn't welcome them, or that's a problem. But there's a massive percentage of the Muslims who come to Britain and then their descendants, as is shown by polls again and again, who do want Sharia law in Britain. So what do you do about that? And that was a fair question. Konstanton said, okay, now they're citizens of Britain and they're voting for it in a democratic process. What do you do about that? Well, the answer is you can't do anything. Once the people are citizens of Britain, that's it. They're citizens. They can vote whatever they want to vote. You can't kick anybody out or arrest anyone for voting, right? I mean, maybe you can outlaw certain candidates. I don't know if they're advocating completely non-democratic principles. I don't know what the law says there. But once people are citizens, the problem becomes 10 times more difficult to deal with of people who want to tear down democracy than if they're not, if they're outside somewhere in the world. So maybe you should stop them from coming in the first place and make your problem a little bit easier to solve. That's the first point. And the second point is you're wrong, mister. You're wrong when you say that Britain is based on fair play and civil liberties. Yeah, Britain has fair play and civil liberties. Britain is a very advanced democracy. It's actually the foundation of democracy pretty much around the world. One of the first parliaments, the first Magna Carta, amazing philosophers who developed principles of liberty and individuality and all those things that spread all the way around the world, United States and other places. All that's great. But Britain, a country is not, an identity of a country is not based on just we're democratic. Democracy is a system of government. It's not an identity. Britain's identity actually is very much rooted in language, the English language. All the great literature and writers throughout the years, for example, in Britain, and just, yeah, the language that spread to all kinds of other places around the world. America, Australia, the English language, that's a crucial part of the British identity for sure. And to say it doesn't matter if people come in and they speak Hindu, Punjabi, and all these other languages and they don't learn English, that's kind of not very British. And the religion also, which you claim that you want an atheist republic, like what's between you and God, that's your business. You're right, that's your business. Is anybody stopping you from doing that in Britain? Like, I know British Jews. Is anyone stopping them from practicing their religion, their Judaism? Nobody's stopping them from doing that. But yeah, Britain historically is a Christian country. What can you do? That's the case. Such a huge part of its history. I mean, look, the Canterbury Cathedral, I was there, Westminster Abbey, the monarchy. The monarchy also is a huge part of the British tradition, the British history. It's part of what makes Britain what it is. God Save the King is the anthem, right? So these things that you want to tear down are actually integral parts of the British identity, whereas the principles of government, of liberalism, are good ways to run any country, but they're not really the source of British identity, are they? So it's kind of weird what you're saying there. What you're saying that Britain doesn't really have any identity besides, oh, we're nice and we're democratic and yeah, everyone come here and we'll get along. That's a very shallow identity. It's kind of, I call it the airport terminal theory, where it's like an airport where everyone's just mulling around from all kinds of places around the world and they just happen to be in the same place and following a certain rule of getting in the queue for the terminal, wherever the plane takes off. That's not an identity. Britain does have an identity, and no, it's not just fair play and democracy. It is actually very much rooted in language, religion, history, monarchy, and a bunch of other things. And if you can try to brush that under the rug at your peril, Because if you bring in people who don't want to be a part of that and to boot also don't agree to your theory of British identity, which is fair play and liberalism, then you have a big problem on your hands. I was going to say you're going to have, but you already have a big problem on your hands. Everybody can see it. That's why now everyone's talking about it. And you still have the last stragglers still trying to gaslight the public into the idea that, oh, there's no problem, as this idiot tried to do here. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.